Those were the days.
Hey everyone, Justin Lee Howard here with another edition of Those Were the Days Extended. And today I am taking you back to April 22nd, 2011. And we are, here we go, April 22nd, 2011, where fake Arnold, or fake Rafe, excuse me, Arnold Finnegar, has this one night stand with this character named Alicia, played by the lovely, incredibly talented Kelly DeBow here. You may recognize her from General Hospital here. We actually see Alicia come, well, not the character of Alicia, but we actually see Kelly come back actually in 2020. She comes back as Zoe Berg. She is Orpheus's daughter and Evan Christian's sister, and she has a little, she has sort of another storyline with Galen in a very different way. If you remember, the character Rafe had custody of David, who was her nephew, and she came back to sort of get him back and sue for custody, and they had some back and forth thing with eventually her getting custody of David and sort of moving away. But yeah, I just wanted to this sort of inspired me to maybe take a little bit of a trip down memory lane, not necessarily with the character of Arnold, but more so with the character of Rafe, and specifically the women in his life or the pairings in his life that I personally feel like were his best. And of course, in order to do that, we have to start off with the one that sort of started it all. Here is Rafe and Sammy, the character, or their ship name, Safe, of course. And start it all, if you don't know their history, if you weren't watching back then, I think Rafe came on the scene in October of 2008 and sort of changed the landscape in a lot of ways, especially for this character with Sammy. Up until that point, we had been going back and forth a lot through the years with Sammy and EJ, and then Sammy and Lucas, and Sammy sort of, kind of being the troublemaker here. We had a few interlopers here sort of come in that just didn't work out. We had Franco Kelly for a little while, who was scamming her. We had other people show interest, and then we had Brandon Walker come in for a little while. So this is post all of that, and then sort of Rafe comes in kind of in a weird way as this shining knight of armor character. And if you don't remember, Rafe came on the scene again, October 2008. He was assigned as Sammy's personal protection. If you remember at the time, Rafe was an FBI agent, and he was assigned to protect a pregnant Sammy who was pregnant with Sydney at this point. She was actually in witness protection against EJ. And they kind of had this instant like opposites attract. They were butting heads. They sort of didn't like each other. And it, again, they were in close quarters with him protecting her in a safe house at first. And then when sort of the threat or the idea of danger was sort of diffused, he was starting to develop feelings for her. So he got himself sort of assigned to continue to sort of protect her in Salem while he was still an FBI agent before he joined the Salem PD here. And Rafe's only connection at that point to the canvas was Carly Manning. He was sort of old friends with Carly, and so that's how they kind of brought him in here. But the stuff with Sammy was, again, very interesting. It was opposites attract. We hate each other, and then slowly develop feelings. This romance was very quickly, I won't say rushed, but I feel like they threw a lot on them at the same time. This wasn't a typical romance where they saw each other, had to meet cute, started dating, and sort of fell in love. Everything was sort of rushed and heightened because of the circumstances. And they were sort of centered around a lot of kids and family storyline, which I think kind of cemented them, which was good in a way. It cemented them as a couple, but it raised the stakes for them a lot. And I think that's why Rafe is considered kind of the quintessential good guy to, in Sammy's history. But everything they went back and forth. They went through Sydney's birth. They went through Rafe trying to adopt her. They went through the death of Grace, which was a big deal for them as a couple. They went back and forth with EJ over custody. Again, these storylines just instantly pushed them into coupledom. How I'll say like it affected them as characters, I'll say I think their coupledom as Safe sort of represent a new beginning, especially for the Sammy character. I think that the powers that be sort of drew a line in the sand and really just wanted to give Sammy a fresh start with a new guy. I think all these years she had the drama back and forth with EJ and Lucas, and I think it was okay. We're going to give her this. We're going to give her the knight in shining armor who's going to come in and really save her and protect her and fall for her and love her for who she is. I think there even though that happened, there was still a lot of push and pull in their relationship when they got together about Sammy scheming, and Rafe sort of allowed himself to get dragged into it. It was sort of like he was going along to get along because he was with Sammy. But I think they like I said, it represented just a new a quintessential good guy for Sammy, free from like all the baggage and drama that she had been dealing with Lucas and EJ and Brandon and everyone else in her past. So I think it was great for that character. For Rafe, I think it just sort of jump-started him as a character, bringing him in, immediately attaching him to Sammy, and sort of making him, again, the opposition. At that time, it was really with EJ, and mostly EJ for the most time. He didn't really have much tension with Lucas over the years. By the time Sammy and Lucas sort of had their back and forth later on, Rafe wasn't with her. So him and Lucas have always sort of been fine with each other, but it's really, as EJ as the devil, sort of Rafe was the angel here, sort of each trying to pull Sammy over to their side there. So I think it was great for that character, a new character coming in with Galen Gehring. Of course, we knew him from Passions, but sort of having coming in as a similar character to who he played as Luis on Passions, but just upping the ante by immediately putting him with Sammy and Allison Sweeney, and they just had such great chemistry. I think that it even though the relationship didn't last, I think that we look at their relationship very fondly over the years, and especially when this past week, if you've watched, we sort of had a little bit of a retread with them, which I gotta say was really nice. I think, again, it wasn't this big thing of them coming together, realizing they love each other, and we're gonna have a, I don't know, third or fourth chance at sort of this romance, but it was just sort of them coming together as ex-lovers or an ex-married couple, and realizing they still do have chemistry and finding comfort in each other. And I got to say, I did love this development. I think, again, they've done this before with these characters, specifically when he was on his break from Hope. They came together again, but I think there's so much chemistry with them there. And even though I don't think they're the most compatible for each other, I think there's something special there, and there's something to be mined every time Allison Sweeney comes back, whether it's them hooking up or finding comfort in each other, or them just sharing scenes with each other. I think their time on the show represented a really interesting time, especially for the character of Sammy. She had that sort of family unit with the kids who weren't Rafe's, but Rafe sort of took on the responsibility of being an involved stepdad, and just represented a really, not, I wouldn't say calm time, but a really sort of safe time for Sammy to sort of develop. And even though, again, she's gone back and forth with EJ and Lucas since then, I think that there's a definitely implied safety that she has and trust with Rafe, and recognizing that he was a great guy in her life. And so, yeah, well, we'll see. I think, Allison Sweeney has now left the canvas from the storyline here. I'm sure we'll see her again in a few weeks as things progress. But yeah, I say I was pleasantly surprised when they put these two in each other's orbit again, and how natural their chemistry was. I thought it was really great. So yeah, more of Safe in the future, whatever that looks like. I'm here for it. Now on to another relationship of Rafe's that I have to tell you is honestly one of my favorites. I don't think it gets talked about a lot because of the length of the relationship, but that is, of course, with Kate and Rafe. And if you don't remember this one, it's probably because it was a little bit short-lived. It was two very unlikely characters that worked for me. I know a lot of people did like this pairing too for other reasons. But this sort of started out as a casual one-night stand, a hookup. It was Kate reeling from her breakup with Stefano, while Rafe was reeling from his back and forth with Sammy / EJ. And I think the two found comfort in each other and genuine feelings. But what I loved about this pairing is I think it allowed Rafe to be himself in a lot of ways. And interesting enough, with this pairing with Kate, Rafe, he didn't have to come in and be the knight in shining armor here. He certainly didn't need protection, or certainly didn't need to protect someone like Kate. She can definitely handle her own. But I think it also allowed the character to admit fully that he really liked bad girls and sort of complicated women. And I think the consensus at that point was is Rafe is the good guy. He's again the knight in shining armor. But but again, he was someone who was attracted to Sammy and, had such a strong friendship with Nicole. And we'll see later on that this is definitely a pattern for Rafe. As much as he is the good guy and is trusted and has great intentions, he does like him a complicated, interesting sort of bad girl in a lot of ways. And I think this was the first sign that we saw of him really admitting it and letting it go and sort of seeing what happened here was his relationship with Kate. So again, it was very short-lived, but I think it worked for what it did for both characters. And one thing I love is that it didn't carry forward in terms of them going back and forth with each other, but it did in terms of how they relate to each other. And if you watch in their scenes, sometimes either when they're together, there's a lot of affection for each other, or if each character is talking about the other character, there's a lot of affection and sweetness, especially from Rafe. I think he really enjoyed his time with Kate and thinks very fondly of her. And I'm sure she does with him too. But especially for him, I think this was the beginning of a little bit of a change for him that allowed himself to, again, really, really admit to himself he sort of liked the bad girl. And it was okay. And it was okay to sort of indulge in that. So yeah, really loved that relationship. And then we are going to go on to what I personally think was Rafe's best pairing, and that is actually the current one that he is in, and that is, of course, the Rafe and Jada. Now, I must admit, I usually am not a huge fan of pairings where characters are very alike. Sometimes I feel like it's too like matchy, or you're just putting these two together because they have the same archetype on the show, and it doesn't always make for great chemistry. But I have to say, I have been pleasantly surprised by how much I've liked this pairing. I think when they were sort of hinting at putting these two together, I was sort of like, okay, we'll see how this goes. I don't know. We love Rafe as a character. We love what he represents. We also are really enjoying Jada as a character at the time, and what she represents. And it was kind of like, okay, we're really going to do this. The writing's on the wall. We'll see how this works out. And like I said, I was very, very pleasantly surprised how much these two actually have chemistry, how much they get along, how much it works for them. And I think to start to think about why that is, I think for a lot of reasons, I think Jada is very much on his level, where they're both on the same level. I also think he learned from his mistakes with Hope, with the relationship he had with Hope, and not to repeat them. I think part of the reason was I was a little like iffy about this was, again, it was them being two cops sort of coming together, and it was like, okay, they already work together. There's a boss subordinate relationship here. I know, are we doing Hope and Rafe part 2? And so again, it was pleasantly surprised that's not the way it went. I think again he learned from those mistakes he did with Hope at the time. I also think Jada has sort of the right amount of personality for someone like Rafe. She's a really good person. She's competent at her job, but she doesn't suffer fools gladly. She's incredibly head smart, and I think Rafe, again, he likes himself a little bit of a complicated woman. And I think Jada is the right mix of that. She's not a bad girl, but she also will give as good as she gets. It is a good compliment to him, I think. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this relationship. I know that currently what we're seeing is that they're going through a little bit of a strife here, and we'll see if they make the long haul. But yeah, for me at this point, I think where Rafe is as a character, I think this is arguably, I think, his best pairing. So I'm looking forward to seeing a little bit more of them as a couple. So we'll see. I do want to give a little bit some honorable mentions here. Some women that I didn't highlight, but I do want to talk about, again, the relationship with Hope. I just think I think on paper, maybe it sounded good. I think the execution of it was way off. I think we saw the writing on the wall that they were basically pushing him as the next Bo character, and I think it just didn't work. I think it was too and ham-fisted. It was too set up into sort of perfect, especially with the character of Bo before he died, sort of giving his blessing to take care of Hope. I think it was a little bit too much. I think it ultimately was a relationship that really didn't work, and I think because of the setup of it just I don't know, it didn't work. It basically just did not work. Another one, I'll talk about his relationship with Carrie. I think could have been interesting, but I think there was so much baggage with the stuff with Sammy. I think if they set it up a little bit differently or approached it in a little bit of a different way, it would have been an interesting dynamic to see Carrie sort of go after and have a relationship with someone who had been with Sammy first, and that sort of dynamic after the years and decades plus we got of Sammy sort of going after Austin and having success and not success with that. So I think again the setup of that could have been interesting to watch if they had done it in a different way. The Nicole relationship, I gotta tell you, was a complete bust for me. I was one of those people who loved and appreciated the Rafe and Nicole friendship over the years. I think that they really worked to build up that friendship, starting with them being the other spouses and being caught up in the Sammy and EJ craziness of it all. And so I think that that's something that really bonded them and cemented them early on, especially with Rafe helping Nicole years ago when she was pregnant, and them developing a really strong friendship from that. I think that was always special, and they had carried that through the show for the last decade. So I was really surprised when they decided to put them together. It was kind of like, okay, they have chemistry, they have a history. I was sort of on the fence about it. I was like, it could kind of go either way. Again, I'll say it. I think they unfortunately ruined the friendship just to make them a couple that sort of didn't last either. I mean, as soon as Eric sort of came on the scene, it was the end of them. You know, the writing was on the wall there. So yeah, I'm one of those people who sort of misses that friendship with Nicole and wish that they honestly just didn't even go there with a relationship or again a marriage with him and Nicole. I just think it didn't do either character. It wasn't in service of either character, unfortunately. And last but not least, I'll briefly mention Ava here. I did like the setup of Ava. Again, Rafe has a history of complicated women. He likes to be the knight in shining armor thing. I thought the Ava one was kind of interesting. I liked the chemistry between the two characters. Again, they sort of sacrificed that relationship to build the Nicole relationship, which they then immediately sacrificed in terms of Eric coming back. So I don't know. I just feel like maybe that's one of the reasons why I really appreciate the Rafe and Jada relationship, is that it's they're giving it time to breathe and actually giving them, I think, in my opinion, a really fair shot at something that can last. So yeah, that was sort of our little brief trip down memory lane about the romances. Rafe, he's also, of course, Jordan was in that mix there, but I don't know. Jordan was sort of iffy. It was too much one-sided for me in that relationship, but yeah, we'll see if we have any more. We'll see if Jada and Rafe are here for the long haul, or we'll see if we get a retreat of any of these past relationships come up in the future. So yeah, stay tuned. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Those were the days.